I just won bronze place in Tune class and silver and bronze place in Open class at Hobbytown's mini four-wheel drive races.
Mark, get set, go!
Final open class Hobbytown in June.
It's June 2023 and the races were totally challenging. Lots of extremely competitive cars this month. Box stock was one in which, well, I'm going to show you the track right here. This was a challenging track right here. It's a purely technical track. And if you were a Speed Demon car, it wouldn't have made it. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of 3.5 to 1 gear ratio cars just flew off the track. That's just how it was in box stock. So yeah, we have to find a slower car. The funny thing was the Animal Racer cars were doing very well. Tune class, I had 2 cars that I raced with. I had Eagle as well as Iron Man. And Iron Man here, I had to weigh it down a little bit with heavier weights in the rear. And yeah, I had to basically switch the motor from an atomic tuned to a torque tuned motor. That was the only way that I could get the proper torque and gear ratios for this particular track. Since this was indeed a torque tune kind of race, I had to race with the torque tune motor. So yeah, this was a pretty good car. It basically withstood a lot of the challenges in that track. And yeah, unfortunately, it just wasn't fast enough to win, but that's okay. It stayed on the track. That's all I can ask for. Yeah. So other cars just flew off the track very easily. This stayed on. I'm glad about that. So with open class, here's the funny thing. I raced 3 cars. I raced a pro car. I raced Venom, my new FMA open class car, and I also raced my classic Wolfie, a VS open class car. If you recall, guys and gals, I had created these and modified these relatively recently. This is a pretty darn fast car to begin with, and this I improved the speed of. Pretty darn cool. You remember that some of the things that I modified on Wolfie, where I removed the wings on the sides, and yeah, I added little niceties here and there. And one thing I had to do was change the power dash motor to something a lot lower. So I put in a hyper dash motor, and that slowed it down a lot. So 4:1 gear ratio with hyper dash motor, it just won lap 1 handily. It was like very fast, and it just did the trick. So pretty cool. It stayed on the track. That's all I can ask for. Now for this one, whoa, I had to make so many changes on this one. So I did motor changes, and I'll tell you why. And I also did brake changes as well. So on this track, this technical track with lots of inclines, a lot of slopes, banks, turns, digital curves, this did fairly well on it. And what can I say? Like this DXN front AT bumper really helped the situation with the digital curves. And the rear, the chandelier pivot, I'm going to get to what exactly happened with the chandelier pivot, which is kind of like weird and frightening at the same time, and it still ran anyway. Like, it was really crazy. But what I had at first was what I call the goatee brake system. So the goatee system has a longer brake on this, on the lower portion of it, which is here, and a shorter brake right here. And the reason why I put a shorter brake here was because my stupidity of putting these regular screws right here. I don't have any countersunk screws to replace these regular screws with just yet. They're on order. I'll get them at some point and I'll replace these screws. So in the meantime, I decided to make the brake system as you see in this picture. Yeah. So I've discovered when racing that with the brake system like that, The big problem was it was slowing down on every slope and incline. The race master commented that it sounded like basketball sneakers on a court, so it slowed down tremendously on every incline. And I was like, yeah, maybe I don't need all that brake in the front, right? So I was like, should I take the smaller one off or the bigger one? And part of me said, you know what? I think it's hitting that back one a lot. So I removed that longer brake, the back one, and I had this little short brake on the front. But on the second and third times I tried it, it was still doing that basketball squeaking. So I just removed the brakes altogether on the front. And you know what? Remember when I was doing testing on this car? It didn't need a front brake, not on these particular types of courses. This was meant and designed to be a 3-lane track car. So yeah, I think that's why when removing these brakes, it still did fairly well. So yeah, and the crazy thing I discovered was like one of the screws got loose and fell off on my chandelier pivot. It's basically a hanging pivot. It's not as fragile as the name chandelier sounds, but in this case it seems like it is, right? The screws loosened from the lock nuts that loosened, and yeah, I was like shocked that this actually got second place even with the defective pivot. So pretty cool, pretty darn cool. And here's one interesting thing. I had hyperdash motors in the first 2 heats. The third heat, I won the heat with an atomic tune motor, and that's the motor that I stayed with for the remainder of the race. So pretty cool that it was fast enough to make second place with an atomic tuned motor. That's all you need on a car that has a good design to begin with. So yeah, a lot of you may laugh at the fact that I've got this chandelier pivot thing that's not a true back-end pivoting system. A lot of you may criticize my use of body catcher material to make a body damper. But for me, that's what I like to do. I like to experiment and make things unique and unique to me. So pretty darn cool. So my bronze place winner was Wolfie. And the amazing thing was, this ended up winning the first lane handily. Like, this was pretty darn fast. And here's why. It's because it stayed on the track. It was very slow. It stayed on the track. And all these other cars were going at breakneck speeds and just flying off the track. And this one just stayed on, putted its way to the finals. Pretty cool. And you know what? It's not that slow because a change of batteries ended up making this the third place winner. So pretty cool, pretty cool. Unfortunately, my pro car didn't fare as well because I didn't pay much attention to it. I didn't put in the proper batteries in there. I didn't properly tune and maintain it. So yeah, I was really focusing on my cars over the other car. But yeah, you'll get to see the full power of it at some point in the future. But yeah, it was pretty cool that I was able to get second and third, given the fact that that these were like not working entirely to my liking. So yeah, this one's built like a rock though. So things are very bolted on nicely on here, and nothing has fallen off of this. I think the only thing that it suffered were these bent screws right here, but I can simply bend them back and that's it. On this one, like things were starting to fall apart on it. It's sort of like my jalopy car, right? Like this should be jalopy car number 2, but no, it's a fast jalopy car, and that's what's good about it. And I think that 3-gram lead weight, that's exactly what I needed to keep this car down. I tried 2-gram weights, 1-gram weights, and the thing would course out easily. So the 3-gram weight just kept it down. I like the weight of this. This is 124 grams with these side weights here. It's balanced. It seems to run right. Had I not included these brakes on there and included my hyperdash motor when it was working, it probably would have secured the first spot. Unfortunately, those 2 hyperdash motors, the reason why I replaced them was they burned out over time. So something in this car is just taxing those little motors a little way too much, and I don't have a lot of battery power in here, so something's causing some sort of burnout. Maybe my bearings weren't lubricated correctly or something like that. So it's the first time that I just said, I'm just gonna go full force and just put every little trick in the book in this, all my knowledge into this, and yeah, then it went like all out thunderously fast compared to all my other open class cars, and I was like, you know what? It paced very well with atomic tuned, and I replaced it with hyperdash, and it was pacing very well with my mock dash car, with my tarantula car, which unfortunately didn't fare well on this track because it's built for speed, not for technical. So this one seems to be more for technical, and yeah, it did as well as it could. So yeah, other little improvements. I could just make this a little bit stiffer, make sure next time that I securely lock down everything instead of just saying, it's already done. So yeah, it's these little things that just ruin my chances of securing that top spot. But sometimes the ball bounces the right way and I secure that top spot. Pretty cool. So yeah, I think this car here, had I kept the power dash motor in there, I would have had to like dumb down the voltage a lot in order for it to stay on the track properly. And I think Eagle I had to make some modifications as well. So for Eagle, I had to change the back weight so that this car would stay on the track. It had too little weight on the rear, and so this was just like, it was just not staying down on the track after all those little mini dragon back jumps. So I put heavier weights in the back, and that kept the car down reasonably well, but it kept on hitting the underpass under the overpass. So yeah, this was strong, solid, and stable. It just wasn't balanced enough for that particular track. So my prizes this month: for bronze in tune class, I won this oil pen, pretty cool. And for silver and bronze in open class, I won these 12, 13 millimeter rollers, the ones with the rubber rings on them. These are the ones I like that I used in this car here to make this DXN front AT bumper. And I also got myself a replacement Hyperdash motor, since there were two that burned out finally. I think you know the saga of the Hyperdash motors. I described it a little bit, where the two Hyperdash motors died while I was able to revive them, but I didn't have a lot of time in between the races to revive each of the Hyperdash motors. Like, I was trying to revive them, and then they fizzled out again, and I think that one of them is totally like dead, and the other one has some chance of surviving. I'll know soon. We'll see if it goes back to its former self. It was my wonderful 44,000 RPM Hyperdash motor. It's so cool. Easy tricks to make your motors faster. You can always use Voodoo oil, which is this greenish, light greenish liquid that you can scour the internet for Voodoo oil, and you can purchase this. However, less is more. Don't kill your motor with Voodoo oil, because then your motors won't last very long. Like that motor, that 2022 Hyperdash motor, didn't last very long because I must have put a little too much Voodoo in it. I don't think I did, but I did. Oh well. And then of course you've got Ganapati oil, my brand of oil, which is very thin oil, and you can use it to lubricate rollers. You can also use it to revive motors. 101 uses with this oil here. Like, oil is like a wonderful thing. You should try to find a favorite oil. For example, sewing machine oil, Singer sewing machine oil. You can try that. You can try other types of oils and just see where you can go with it. Some people use WD-40, and that lubricates things very well. So try and experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment. That's what it's all about. Experimentation is the key, and then you can bring all of this knowledge to your friends in the mini four-wheel drive world. Pretty cool. So yes, I had other cars here. I had a bunch of cars I wanted to race in box stock, and unfortunately all of my FMA cars just totally like went kaput. It was a shame. My FMA cars, I had mostly FMA cars, and they all went kaput. I'm glad I didn't bring more FMA cars. I had the new Rising Edge also, and this did fairly well. This stayed on the track for the most part, except for the final lane. The final lane, it would course out, and I'm like, no. So yeah. Some of you know that I said this in testing, that the Rising Edge, this is a car to be reckoned with. Like, I had no idea that it was going to be that fast. And the price you pay for this is like $20.50 in the US, and it's more expensive than most of the cars out there, but it gives you something that's kind of solid. And yeah, you should just experiment with an MS chassis car for box stock if you haven't yet. You're gonna love it and hate it at the same time. It's just one of those things where it's a lot more narrow than other box stock cars. So it's gonna be bouncing around the track a lot more, but the way that it's designed, it could be a speed demon. It can be a winner. Like, I've seen it beat mock frames. That's how fast it is. So if you know how to tune your battery voltages right, and you know how to build your car right, and you put the right motor in, not too fast, not too slow, you're going to beat those mock frames. And that's a tall order, because beating a mock frame in most cases is pretty darn cool. It's hard to do. It's hard to do, to beat a mock frame. Mock frame is one of the like loved cars out there, and a lot of people race it for a reason, because it wins box stock races. The race master this month at Hobbytown threw us a curveball and made this track very technical, and so we had to like basically throw out all of our speed knowledge and try to slow down our cars enough so that they would stay on the track. So yeah, kudos. Big thumbs up for this track, because it really challenged us this month. So I was like ripping off all of my brakes and putting on new sets of brakes, because this track demanded like different brake setups than the previous ones. If your track is the same every single month, that's boring, right? So you want to have a challenging track. And take a look at that. That track is so challenging. It starts off with a 5-lane section, goes on to a 3-lane section, or 2 3-lane sections stuck into one, followed by a 5-lane section, followed by another 3-lane section, back into the original 5-lane section. It is a tour de force of awesomeness that Eric designed, and it's like so cool this month that we had something like that. So cool. And it really made our brains like work overtime to try to get the proper setups for our cars. So yeah, so cool that we were able to race on this track. It was a privilege to race on a track like this. Whoa, with all of our cars that were built for certain tracks, like we basically built these, as in like the collective entity, I mean, most of us build our cars for speed. And to think about this from a technical track perspective is like something that is new for a lot of us. And I would say that Ken, who won silver in tune class and gold in open class, he is like a racing master. Like he can modify brake setups better than I can on the fly. Like that's really cool that he can just like determine what brake setup he needs going over those slopes and those dragging back hills. And yeah, he can do that better than I can. So I think that's the difference there. He was able to change his setup or configure it in such a way that he was able to take advantage of the type of track that it was and just go fast around parts that I was going slow on. So yeah, I've got to improve my game in terms of my brake setup strategies. So yeah, I sometimes just rely on a car, like I just sit and kind of relax and try to let the car speak for itself. And sometimes you just have to make that modification, that crucial modification. Sometimes it's just one little thing that makes all the difference in the world. Sometimes all you need to do is rip off the darn brakes, and then you get a thing that works, a setup, a configuration that works. Sometimes you need more brakes, sometimes you need less. That's just how it is. Sometimes you need more dampers, sometimes you need less. You know, like, that's just how it is, and that's the fun and challenge of mini 4-wheel drive racing. It's always a puzzle. Every track is a puzzle, and the cars that you race on them, it's a thinking person's game. You need to figure out how to cross that finish line as quickly as possible while staying on the track and being a little faster than the other racers. Pretty cool. So yes, everybody, if you like this video, please slam the like button, subscribe to my channel, and you'll see more videos just like this one. And until next time, everybody, see you. Bye.